And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top Podcast. I'm your host, Harrison Arena. Alongside me, co-host Dan Kiley. No, that is not Josh Pate. I know he's wearing a white shirt, but that is not Josh Pate. He is Dan Kiley wearing the Trash Pandas hat. Dan, how are you doing this wonderful Wednesday game week edition of the Top Podcast evening?
Live in the flesh, baby. And that's from a movie. And if you can get it, put it in the comments. You win a prize.
Ooh,
Yeah. I don't think there's any chance in hell anybody could get that. But I'm doing great. I'm trying to wake myself up and bring the energy. Health problems are kicking my butt right now, but this is like something that I was looking forward to because it is freaking game week. And when Georgia's playing a football game, nothing else matters, right? So it gets all of our attention. So I'm really, really excited. I'm really happy that I'm able to be here today, and let's freaking do a great show.
Hey, let's get right into it. Get what? Awesome. Hey, all right. Hey, Zach, if you showed up just a tad bit late, Dan had a little, what would you call it? Jingle to start the show?
So it's from a movie where he's like, in the flesh, baby.
Okay, there you go. There's a little trivia for you. If you get in the comments, Dan will give you a prize. I don't know what prize. We did not discuss that. That was unplanned. Our intros are always unplanned, other than the hot topics. Let's get it. Hot topic number 1, Dan. Collar Stallions, Sign Stealer, the untold Netflix documentary dropped. Simply, let's give our thoughts on that. You first.
I mean, it's and we did talk about this a little bit off the show, so this is going to be repetitive for Harrison, but not for you. I thought it was a Connor Stallions friendly documentary. I don't think whoever produced it, or I'm pretty sure he wanted to do it to kind of get his message out there. So they did not kill him in any way, shape, or form. If you haven't seen it, maybe skip like 2 or 3 minutes ahead in the show. And if you're listening back, if not, I apologize. But you know the story. So surely shouldn't be any spoilers. Yeah. So for me, my initial reaction was, okay, I was never really that upset about it to begin with. And then the way he tells the story, if you believe it, the way it's presented, was the guy just worked his ass off and was really creative, was a scientist or was a decoder in the military. So that was kind of up his alley. I did not know what was new to me is I did not know that he did it for the Naval Academy before he went on to Michigan to do it. Had a real talent for it. They even pointed out that when he was at Navy, they played a game against Ohio State, and because of him, if you believe his story, because of him, they were extremely competitive with Ohio State, which should not happen, and it was 31 to, I believe, 17 was the final. And then he went on to Michigan, and yeah, he didn't bury anybody, and that was kind of what I thought was going to happen. Was he didn't bury anybody? He didn't expose anything. He basically said it was all me, and I was just better than everybody else at it, and I just worked harder than everybody else. If you believe that story, then it's hard to be upset with him. I think the reason that people like Jonathan, who's our friend, didn't like the documentary is because I think he wanted some, and we haven't really discussed it, but my perception would be that he wanted some bodies. He wanted a body count coming out of that show, but that's not what happened. So I didn't hate it. It is what it is. I did enjoy it because he did show how much time and effort he put into it, and I think part of my initial reaction was like he just freaking outworked everybody. But I'm not stupid either, so I don't know. What do you think, Harrison?
I'm with you. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I didn't really have the high expectations as you said. I just kind of I was there for the story of all of it, kind of the inside look. If you believe that story of a moon rock for sale, hey, that's an elite comment right there. That's how we modded him.
I told you that they didn't have any bodies. There was no body count. So I know it's bullshit, Zach. But all right, go. I'm sorry, Harrison.
You're good. You're good. I saw that too. I had to call it out. Hey, that's what we pride ourselves on. We read out the funny comments.
Fan friendly.
Yeah, fan friendly. I was happy with it. I liked seeing kind of the inside look of it all. Gave us a little bit more perception into what was going on. Told us his story, which is really what people, I guess, need to understand. This isn't a 30 for 30. We're going to drag this dude because he cheated. This is a who's Connor Stallions? Who's this mysterious man who captured the attention of college football for months, 2 months on end? That's what this is. Now, here's what I told Dan, and I'll reiterate it here on the show. I came away from it kind of feeling bad for the guy, having a little sympathy. And I know from the perception, from the way my belief, what I believe is, I believe it cheated. I do think there was in-person scouting. I think he paid people to go do it. There are receipts for it. Now, we're waiting for the whatever the NCAA investigation unfolds, but it seems to me like there is a breadcrumb. There's a cookie crumb trail, if you will, that he cheated. Sign stealing, per se, is not cheating. You can steal signs via the TV copy, via the game tape, via just in there in person, looking across the sideline at your opponent. But what you can't do, and I'll reiterate this again because I think Michigan fans lose sight of it, is you can't send somebody to go in-person scout, record their sideline, and then use that. That's an unfair advantage. Now, how big of an advantage is stealing signs? I don't know. I don't know if there's a way you can verify that or even measure that. But my whole perception is, Dan, I don't believe the guy when he says he didn't recall if he was at the Central Michigan game. Bullshit. You knew if you were at the Michigan game. I'm sorry. I'm going to use my one pass right there on that. Hey, actually, I'm going to use a term that the buddy Sean Keeler over at the Denver Sports Post said about Deion Sanders. That is the Bruce Lee of BS. And I quote, yeah. You knew you were at the Central Michigan game. You just didn't want to admit it in front of the investigation. What's funny is Dave Portnoy came out and said after that, you were at the Central Michigan game. So you lied.
And I know that because you told me.
Yeah. So you lied. But story aside, lying aside, sign stealing aside, I came away thinking, okay, I'm here for it. I feel a little sympathetic for the man. He was doing it for he was doing it because he loved his university. And I think Dan and I both can say, hey, I think we'd do a lot for this university if we ever had the chance.
Without question, hook, line, and sinker. If Kirby Smart called my phone right now and said, Dan, I need you to do something for me, short of murdering somebody, I'm doing it. If he said drive down to Georgia Tech and sneak into the coach's office and give me every single playbook, my ass would be down there with a blacked out ski mask and everything else with a crowbar trying to get in that coach's office. Okay. So you're damn right. If Jim Harbaugh asked this guy to do it, you better believe he did it, because I would do it for my university. If Kirby Smart called me right now, short of murder, there's very little I wouldn't do.
Yeah. I think that goes for everyone. Now, that's not dismissing the cheating. We aren't dismissing that. It happened. I think it happened. I think Dan thinks it happened. But anything other than that, I was not as upset with the documentary as some people think, but I still wouldn't put it above the Johnny Manziel Untold documentary. That is number one for me. Number one. They went into the dark side of Johnny Manziel. If he told me to take a bat to Brent Key's knee, I would in an instant. That is what Zachary Moss said for our listeners on podcast. I did not say that. Zachary Moss said that. Dan, do you want to give a little? Actually, no. I'll say that for another show. Dan,
no, go ahead. Draft this week. I know where you're going. Go for it.
I was just gonna ask. Let's hear the Brent Key take after this week. After you picked Georgia Tech to win, you were correct. I will give you your flowers. But in doing so, you came out afterward and called me and said, "Hey, I regret rooting for Tech this weekend." Tell our audience why. What happened?
Because Brent Key's an asshole. Like, I don't understand. It's not hard to be nice or whatever. Like, I understand that, like, coaches don't like to do media. Kirby doesn't like to do media. And sometimes they can be snarky and snarly or whatever. But, all right. So, for instance, Georgia's media, whenever they do it, it's DJ Shockley, right? He does, like, the inside, I believe it's either radio or TV. I'm not sure. But he always gets Kirby right before halftime, right after the game. He gets that sound bite or whatever. Kirby Smart has never been rude or disrespectful to DJ Shockley. That is their person, right? He is in their group. He does their media. So if you listen to 680 The Fan is the official sports home of Georgia Tech. So they have a guy named, his last name is Mooningham, and I can't think of it, for Chris Mooningham, and he does the sideline reporting for Georgia Tech. So they are out at in Ireland, and he comes over, and okay, now I will say that at no point did Mooningham ever ask him an actual question. He just said, like, Coach, there were times during this game where your offensive line was the most dominant group on the team, and you rushed for like 169 yards, and then dipshit was like, "Good for them." Like, and he's like, "Well, the wins just keep getting bigger." No, they don't. And then he tried one more thing, and he's like, "Yeah, cool, go Jackets." And it was a complete dick to him. I'm like, first of all, you've not done anything. Like, do I think he's a good coach? He's probably a good coach. I think that he's doing a good job. Don't get it twisted. But he's a dick, and there's no reason to be a dick. You just beat Florida State. Like, show a little bit of emotion and be a little bit happy. I don't know. And then of course I get called out, not by name, but and I'm sure it wasn't directed directly at me. I think Jonathan told on me is really what I think happened. Brooks goes on the show and says there's no way that you could have wanted Tech to win that football game. But I did it because I have a real distaste for Florida State right now. And Jonathan's point was that we got ours 63-3. But it's just kind of like piling on. It's like, in a wrestling match, when the one guy does the body slam and he gets the pin and the other guy comes off the top ropes, the guy's already dead. You don't need it. You don't need it, but it's nice to see it. Sometimes you just want that extra body slam. And this was more than that. This was to pick him up and then kick him in the nuts. So Florida State got theirs. So my bad, Brooks. My bad, Jeremiah, Jonathan, everybody else who was mad at me for picking Tech, but I did. Sorry. That just completely derailed our show.
No,
we maybe just lost a lot of people, but who knows?
Hey, don't judge Dan for Tech. If he had money on the line, he would have won big because he had it on the dot. You go back last Wednesday's show, he said Georgia Tech was not going to cover. He said Georgia Tech was going to outright win the thing. And that hit pretty big this weekend. Dan, blind draft. I have no clue what this is. I don't even have it on the show sheet as in what it is titled. So I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. So this is just a little bit of fun. Just put 1 through 5 up there for me. And what we're going to do is I'm going to give you 5 teams. Okay. And we're just going to rank the top 5 teams on how you would rank them going into, obviously, we didn't do this last week when we probably should have. I'm just going to give you random teams. Not all of them are going to be top 5 teams. Maybe I won't give you like an Iowa or something. Well, maybe I'll give you an Iowa. I don't know. But these are teams, and I want you to rank them 1 through 5 on how you think they're going to finish the season. Okay.
Ooh. Okay.
All right. So,
yes, sir.
So in theory, if for you to nail this, and like I said, I'm not saying they're going to be top 5 teams, but in order of finish, like this team would be ahead of this team, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
All right. First one. Are you ready? Utah.
The Big 12 is, as Josh Pate would say, is America's conference. And if I had to guess, I think they're winning the Big 12 this year. I think if they don't, it'd be a disappointment. I don't think there's anybody. I mean, Kansas State, maybe. I don't think Baylor's going to be that good. Kansas, I think, is a team our friend Jonathan likes a lot, and it's hard to disagree with them. Oklahoma State, obviously. I think Utah is going to be the 4th seed because I think they're going to win the Big 12, and that's an automatic bid into the college football playoff for them. So I'll put them at 4.
Oregon.
All right. This is where it gets interesting, Dan, because I really like Oregon. I like them a lot. And as I kind of body slammed Deion Sanders on my timeline today, when the report came out that Oregon didn't cheat, didn't hack into their database to get that, practice tape of Colorado's, they didn't need it to beat Colorado anyways. But Oregon's going to be one of the best teams in the country. My biggest question with Oregon is, who's going to win that Ohio State game? Mm-hmm. Simply, the winner of that game is going to win the Big Ten. So in this case, I think I'm going to take Oregon. If this objective is to rank them top 5 by where they finish the end of the season, I'm going to rank them at number 2 because I'm not sure if Ohio State's on this list. If Ohio State's on this list, I'd probably put them at 5 if we're doing like top 5 playoff seedings because I think Ohio State has the talented team to do it. But right now, since I don't know if Ohio State's up here, I'm putting them at 2. May regret that.
Texas.
Man, not knowing which other SEC teams are up here makes this tough. Give me a little Mississippi State, or not Mississippi State. What am I saying? Ole Miss, Georgia, Bama. 3 teams right there that I think you could probably put in the top 5. Not knowing if there's Georgia or Bama up here, I'm going to put Texas at 5 as the top unranked conference champion. But man, this is going to look real bad if there's another SEC team in here. Potentially.
Ohio State.
Number 1. I'm going to Ohio State number 1. I think, man, that's actually really bad. Ohio State's up here. Oregon's at 2. This wouldn't happen in the playoffs. But hey, going into the seeding, going into conference championship weekend, this is probably how it might look. I don't know.
And number 5 is Georgia.
Hey, all right. I'm cool with it. I think this is about how I'd rank it. I'm really interested with how the CFP ranks it week to week. Because heading into conference championship weekend, I think you could see something like this.
Well, just remember, I said how just these 5 teams, who would rank in what order? Because if if Georgia is ahead of Texas, that means they beat Texas, and that means they lost to Alabama. So Alabama might actually be number 1, but they're not on this list. So, it is what it is. Like, there could be a team between Ohio State and Oregon. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I think if you had it over to do over again, you might have Georgia 1, maybe, I don't know. And you might have Oregon down. I'm not sure.
I'd have Texas over Utah for sure, just because of the schedules. Obviously, strength of schedule. Even if Texas lost and Utah didn't, for sure. But for me, I'd move Georgia up maybe a spot. Ohio State and Georgia would be probably my top 2. And I'd lean either way with either of them. They have the 2 talented rosters. But then, Oregon and Texas is really close. Utah would be my outright 5. Like, I have no question they'd be the worst of the 5 teams.
Well, I think you did a good job. I try to make it difficult. I didn't give you any crap where you could just dump somebody at 5. I made you actually think about it.
Hey, I like this one. I like that. We may have to bring it back. I'm not a big let's do our own rankings guy because our opinions really don't matter in the grand scheme. Ooh, sorry. Yeah, Dan, our opinions don't matter in the grand scheme of things when it comes to rankings. But maybe we get a Dan Kiley Harrison poll each week. Maybe a top 5, top 10, top 12, whatever, week to week. We'll see. Dan, changing gears. It's game week. Georgia Clemson. It's been what? 6 months since Georgia last played?
Too damn long.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I'm excited that we get football back again. It's been a long time coming. This offseason, I know we said it last week's show, this offseason kind of flew by, kind of flew under the radar, and I don't know what that was. I don't know if just because Dan and I weren't really talking week to week about college football, we were talking about other things in life, but the offseason flew by. It was a great offseason, quick offseason, and football's back now. And I couldn't be more excited to talk about a Georgia football game because we haven't done it in a long time. We didn't even get a Florida State review after the butt whooping they put over there at the Orange Bowl. But Dan, we got a Clemson preview. Let's open it up right away. This preview, we are not Clemson experts. We don't have a Clemson expert. So our takes on Clemson are not, let me say, I guess, expert level. But we can give you our Georgia takes. We do those pretty well. So let's start it off with what I think's going to make this preview, I guess, something Georgia fans will want to watch, is let's go through our biggest questions. Dan, I have options. I have 2 options here in terms of biggest questions, but they're not really that all-encompassing. I didn't take your input. I just threw down stuff on a page, and I knew if you had something, you'd bring it. What is your biggest question heading to this game of like, okay, I need to know this, and then I can know the result?
I think the biggest question that every Georgia fan has across the board, whether it be me, whether it be one of the expert media people who cover the team every single day, is what is the running back room going to look like on Saturday? We don't have definitive answers. I mean, if you believe the internet, they know everything. Vegas is saying that they have confirmation that ETN is going to play. But it's hard to know because Kirby hasn't said anything. And if Kirby doesn't say anything, then you don't know. Until it comes out of the horse's mouth, you don't know. If ETN plays, I feel a lot better. Not to say that there's not talent in that room, but I believe ETN is extremely talented as a player. So I would love to have him available. So I think that is the overall offensively the biggest question of the day. And then secondly, for me, and it's a question but not a negative, okay? So please understand I'm saying it's a question but not a negative. What does the offensive line look like? I know that they pretty much have settled on a 5. There were some injury things that were kind of floating around. We think everybody's healthy and ready to go, but you really don't know until bullets start flying whether guys are 100% or if they can compete at the highest level. Now, Georgia's in a great place where they have a lot of guys, seriously talented guys that can get the job done. I would like to see what that first group looks like, and I want to see how dominant they can be because I have a feeling this could be one of our better lines. Even though the name value may not be there, I believe the talent is there, and I believe the cohesiveness is there, and I would like to see how effective that group can be. Now, I know that you have a couple different options here. So for me, just to kind of recap, the running back room, how does it shake out? Is ETN going to be able to play? And what does that first 5 look like across the offensive line? And how about how powerful is that offensive line going to be?
Sounds like Dan is worried about Cash Money Jones. I promise you, Dan is never worried about that man Cash, nor that man Dan Jackson.
No,
But
not worried.
I get your point here about the running backs. I actually meant to put that in the notes, and then I got carried away and did not. We had an excellent pregame conversation in our group chat before this show, but you may not have Trevor Etienne, and we know Rod Robinson's not going to be there. Rod Robinson had a turf toe injury, I guess, second scrimmage, and has been revealed by Kirby that he got surgery. And while Kirby didn't say it, or maybe he did and I just didn't hear it, he ain't playing. Surgery, obviously means he ain't going to be there for that. So that leaves the running back room a little bit bare. Now, there are 3 freshmen in that room: Nate Frazier, Chauncey Bowens, Dwight Phillips. Nate Frazier's been the name that I think everybody's been talking about over here recently in regards to the Georgia space. How much run does he get? I'd assume if Trevor Etienne's not the guy, Branson Robinson might be the guy coming out of the gate. I don't know, Dan, because it's when you look at the room, and who am I missing here on the at running back? You have the 3 freshmen, you have Etienne, you have Rod Robinson, Branson Robinson. Is that it? Cash Jones. Is that it?
Yeah, I believe my buddy's gone. Savion Clark, I think he's gone, right?
Man, you have one. You don't even have a returning starter in that room. Now thinking about it. Now,
Hey, you
Etienne
know what?
obviously started at Florida.
Outside of ETN, Cash Jones probably has the most carries in that room.
I'd venture to say so, yeah.
I mean, that's not a
Branson
joke.
only has
for real.
Branson only has freshman year.
Yeah.
And he's coming off injury. So
they're not afraid to use Cash either because he got quality carries in games. I mean, he wasn't in when we were up 40-0. I mean, he was in games when the game was still in doubt. So
yeah,
they're not scared to put him in the football game.
Yeah.
I know we like to laugh and joke about Cash, but like they used him for real. And we had running backs last year.
Yeah. Whew. Running back, I'm with you there. Off the top of my head, I did not put this in the notes, so excuse me if I forget somebody. Starting 5, if I had to predict up front, I'd go from left to right. It's going to be Ernest. Oh, boy. I'm already blanking. It's going to be Ernest, Fairchild, Wilson, Ratledge, and Truss is the way I'd see it. I wouldn't be surprised by the end of the year if Truss takes over at guard or switches out with one of the guards, probably Fairchild, and Monroe Freeling ends up at right tackle at some point in the year. That's just, they moved Xavier Truss around, I think, the last 2 years a little bit. He got some guard time. He got some tackle time. I think Monroe Freeling is going to be a stud, so I would not be shocked if we see him at some point. Dan, I'm with you there as well. I really can't wait to see this offensive line work because if you think back to last year, it just felt like the run game for Georgia wasn't as consistent as it always had been. Now, whether that was just the backs or if that was something with the offensive line, Georgia really struggled at times to run the football, specifically Alabama. Can they do that Saturday against a really, really stout Clemson defensive front? Now, changing sides, flipping sides of the ball, going from the Georgia's offense to Georgia's defense. I got one question, and really one question only here, Dan, and it's the defensive front. And I'm gonna have some trust as an analyst, as somebody trying to cover the Georgia team. I don't have many questions or doubts of the secondary. I think Kirby is going to get that worked out either way. And I really don't have questions about the defense. Well, I kind of have questions about the defensive line, but I don't have doubts in terms of Trey Scott. They just got some young players there. They got some veteran guys who aren't what you consider difference makers, but they're just really solid contributors. But they got some young guys that could be difference makers. Numero uno for me, Dan, is Damon Wilson. If Damon Wilson plays like the 5-star stud coming out of high school, that's a big deal right there. Because then you have Damon Wilson coming off one edge. Then you have Mykel Williams, who's supposed to be the headliner of this defensive front this year. I got to see those guys go to work. If Mykel Williams has a career day, man, oh man, am I going to feel great about the Georgia defensive line.
I just have faith. Like the one thing about Georgia football that I'll never question is the defense, as long as Kirby Smart is involved. And you know what? I know Muschamp kind of got a lot of crap before he came back, but the one thing that he was always really good at was being the defensive coordinator. He may not have been the most successful head coach in the world, but he is a damn good defensive coordinator, and he's a good coach, and he's a good recruiter. And Kirby and him are best friends. So, that's one of those things where I can only imagine how awesome it would be to sit in a room when those two are going at it on how to stop a team. Because, they're both extremely competitive and they're both really good at designing defenses. That would be so much fun to watch those two just go at it.
Rather loud and intense individuals, too.
Yes, that would be maybe a little bit intimidating, but it would be so fun to sit in a room and watch them come up with a defensive plan for a game. So my point being, those guys are extremely talented. They know how to implement a game plan. And they know how to get the most out of guys. I think they're going to put people in the right position until they prove that they can't do it. I'm going to go there. And then it doesn't hurt, Harrison, that the fact that Georgia has 5 stars all over the damn place. So one of my least concerning, the least of my concerns, I apologize, I'm getting tongue-tied. The least of my concerns is that Georgia would struggle on defense. If that were to happen, I would be extremely shocked. We have really yet to see it play out where Georgia gets manhandled. There was a game, I can't remember. It was one of the first games after the season where, I guess it was last year, right? So Jalen Carter was gone and Jordan Davis was gone. And it was one of the first games where Georgia was kind of getting gashed on the ground. And it was like the last, it had been a long time since I remembered.
Missouri.
Was it Missouri?
Missouri gave up the outside zone runs all day long.
Oh, my goodness gracious. And it was like, I remember, I think I even put in our little group chat that we have, our 4-way group chat, is I was like, I don't remember. I forgot what this feels like to get manhandled in the run game. And I don't see that. I don't see that happening.
Yeah. And I think the problem versus Missouri, and hopefully, I think what Georgia's hoping is they have that fixed this year, is not being able to set the edge as well. And that's just a product of the edge play not being at the level it was in 21 and 22, where you had a first, pair of first-round draft picks or late-round draft picks in that room over there. So if back to my point of, if Damon Wilson comes to play like he did in high school and he, starts showing the progression towards fulfilling his potential, I think Georgia set at edge rusher for a long time, at least for the next 2 or 3 years, because you have Damon Wilson in there. You're going to bring in another 5-star guy, and Isaiah Gibson most likely this coming winter. And then you're going to add them to an already loaded room. Dan, I think in terms of breakout players for that front seven, we already touched Damon Wilson, Jalen Walker, who has been a guy of intrigue when it comes to the media over the last few weeks. It's the constant question of, where is Jalen Walker fit best? When you ask him that and you hear him speak, seems to me he wants to play edge rusher. He wants to get off, he wants to be up on the edge and go get after the quarterback. Now, Georgia has let him do that a lot, especially last season. He came on strong toward the end of the year. I want to say Ole Miss was one of his better games last year in terms of pass rush. But they also could play him at inside linebacker, which is also another loaded position. So where does Georgia play him? I assume he's going to be a part of the third down package, especially on third down against Clemson this coming weekend. But I wouldn't be shocked if we see more of those sets where, Jalen Walker's, coming in on some of those crossfire blitzes at inside linebacker that they kind of use with Nakobe Dean, Channing Tindall, Quay Walker. I'd love to see them get really creative with their use of Jalen Walker. What were you going to say, Dan?
So, I wanted to bring up my one question for the defense while you were still hitting on the area that I was concerned about, or not concerned. That's not the question. That's not the right way. I'm not concerned. I'm interested to see. All right, we know CJ Allen is an absolute beast in the middle, and we know that linebacker room is extremely loaded. I am interested to see if Justin Williams is good enough to push that group and to force his way on the field. If he doesn't, that's not an indication of he's not talented. It's just that there's so much talent in that room. But if he's as good as I think he is, if he's as good as he's been advertised, then at some point in the season, he's going to force his way onto the field. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. So I can't wait to see the kid play. And then also, I can't wait to see if he's able to force his way onto the field, because that's one of the guys that I was really excited that we were able to get because of everything that I've been told about him. And just, obviously highlight packages, right? Everybody's look good. Okay. I understand that by definition, they all look good. But I want to see if he's able to force his way onto the field.
I'm gonna pick up that torch and run with it real quick, because there's two other guys I think very well that are in that same situation. KJ Bolden trying to outrun Dan Jackson, which I don't know. Maybe he can outrun Dan Jackson in a race. We'll see.
I don't think you can. I think Dan Jackson's faster. And if you are laughing right now, you don't know Dan Jackson.
Number 2, Ellis Robinson. Really loaded quarterback room. You have Dalen Everett, Daniel Harris, June Humphrey. 3 guys who, outside of Dalen Everett, have not started many, if any, games. I think Daniel Harris, I forget who started the Orange Bowl. I think Kamari started that game. But Daniel Harris and Jillian Humphrey got a lot of run that game once Kamari's day was done. Now those guys are having to be the guy. And for Dalen Everett, he's trying to go from the guy that defenses targeted because he was playing opposite to Kamari to being the guy that offenses avoid. And I'm really excited to see that development, because Dalen got some slack last year because he was always the guy that was getting targeted. And when he did get targeted, when he did give up a play, fans would be out there in the mentions talk about, hey, this guy's not good. He is good. He was just playing a guy alongside a guy that was a lot better. So why would you throw at the guy that was great when you can throw at a guy that was good? Just football.
Well, let me, before you go on, one of the other issues is we didn't have great pass rush last year. We didn't have tremendous pass rush. It's hard for anybody to cover for a long period of time. And I would be willing to bet, and I haven't broken the film down, but a lot of those plays where he got beat up on, he had to cover for a little while, right? And it's extremely difficult to do that. So I would say hold your breath, or not hold your breath, but take a step back and let this thing play out, because I don't think he's nearly as bad as people think he is, and I think he's going to be pretty impressive this year. You may continue, sir.
I'm excited to see that with Dalen. I think we talked about on this show, either this show or we talked about on the phone. Those two things run together. The phone calls with Dan and the shows with Dan, they run together, those conversations. But I'm looking to see if we see the same jump from Dalen Everett that we saw going into year 2 with Tyson Campbell, Eric Stokes. Maybe not as much with DeAndre Baker. I think DeAndre Baker was just a stud from what I remember. Keely Ringo had a little bit of a jump, although he didn't play year 1. He didn't play as a freshman because of shoulder surgery. But when he did come into his year as a starter, he did look the part. So KJ Bolden, Ellis Robinson, how do those guys get into the field, and how quickly do they get on the field? I think from what Dan was talking about, in our conversations this week when we talked about KJ Bolden. He was like, well, Kirby has not been shy when talking about the kid. And that's pretty unusual in terms of talking about freshmen, because he's never one to be shy in saying that kid has a long way to go, especially when talking about the young guys. He has been anything but shy about how talented KJ Bolden is.
You're 100% right. He does not go out of his way to talk about freshmen hardly ever. So to me anyway, and this is my opinion, when I hear Kirby say something positive about a freshman on his own, like he's not being asked, nobody's trying to pull it out of him. When he just kind of goes out of his way, what's the word I'm looking for? Unprovocated. I'm
Unprovoked.
Yeah, unprovoked. That's saying something to me. The last time we saw him do that was Malachi, and I think that played out pretty well.
Absolutely. I'll never forget the Malachi Starks, and I want to go track down the show. It may have been pre-Oregon show where Dan said, y'all watch out for Malachi Starks. I think he's going to have a big year.
I got laughed at, bro. Listen, I wish I had receipts. I wish I had receipts of all the people who gave me shit because I said Malachi Starks was going to start. They're like, no, Georgia has too many guys in the secondary. There's no way he's getting on the field. Eat it.
I think there are receipts. We just got to go track down YouTube to go find it. Because I remember you bringing it up on the show. It's pre-Oregon. And I'm sitting here like, he has to beat out Dan Jackson. Yeah. So I was not, I was shocked. I think a lot of people were shocked. There are a few people that don't think we're shocked. Dan was one of those. But I
watched the kid for 4 years take snaps at every damn position on the field. That kid was an absolute beast, and he was always the best player on the field. Did not matter who he was playing against. He was always the best player on the field, and those guys are special. Sorry. That's
no, you're good.
Rant.
You're good. We had to talk Malachi Starks a little bit because he is a key player. Dan, let's go back to the offense real quick because I know we went on a tangent about the defense. I know we talked about the offensive line. We talked about the running back. We got the two biggest storylines there. Third, and when I say replace, I'm using this very, very, very loosely because you ain't replacing these two guys, at least not yet. Maybe 10, 20 years down the road, you may find somebody. But how are you going to, I guess, let's say, fill the void left by Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey? Or how are you going to reinvent yourself? I don't think Georgia's going to technically reinvent the wheel when it comes to their offense. They're going to be the same offense, going to have, very, 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 very similar playbook. They ain't going to change the playbook. They may add stuff to it. But what does the Georgia offense look like? I have not seen a Georgia offense, Dan. And this is crazy to say. It's been 3 years since we've seen a non-Brock, non-Ladd McConkey offense. Feels like forever ago.
Well, we have seen games where they were both missing.
True. But it's very few. So I don't know exactly. I guess we both have our mental picture of what we expect, and I don't think much is going to change. I think the only thing that's going to change is, as I think Kirby said in the press conference this week, they're still going to run the plays they usually ran for Brock. It's just going to be a different guy catching the football or a different guy being put in those positions. I went back and listened to his press conference after the Florida game last year, and that's essentially what he said is, hey, we ran a lot of the same plays we did with Brock, but it was somebody else running those routes. It wasn't always Oscar. It was somebody else. So I'm really curious to see that. I guess the biggest point for me, Dan, when it comes to watching this Georgia offense play is that receiver room, that playmaker. You got to have a difference maker at that position. Last year, they had Brock and Ladd. The year before that, when he was healthy, they had Brock, Ladd, and AD. What does this look like? Everybody, and I mean everybody, is expecting Dominic Lovett to be the dude, to be the guy that was the 1,000-yard receiver over at Missouri. We got to see that this year if you're in Georgia's offense. I think he has the chemistry already with Carson Beck. He showed it last year. There's spurts last year where he took over games for Georgia, especially when Ladd and Brock weren't there. But here's another guy, Dan, that I think I might champion as my, I guess, personal favorite in terms of who I think is going to have a big year, Dylan Bell. And it's not an unpopular pick because he had a big year down the stretch last year. Think of the Tennessee game. He had 2 catches along the sideline. They're absolutely huge. He plays much bigger than he is. I want to say he's like 6', 6'1". He's not very tall, but he plays tall. And I love that about him. He's supposed to be the X receiver in this Georgia offense this year. How does he hold that down? That's kind of the big question here with him. And then you have the potential newcomer in Colby Young. What does Colby Young look like in this offense? We saw flashes at Miami. He had a pretty good year at Miami. Now he's at Georgia. There's been ranting and raving about the kid, but now it's time to go play against what is supposed to be a pretty talented Clemson secondary. That's kind of my key, Dan, and it's a pretty obvious one, is what does the offense look like? Because you're going to be down a running back or two potentially. So you need receivers to show up and show up big.
Well, hey, listen, I'm not an expert, but I will tell you this. If NCAA 2K20 or if NCAA 25 is any indication of what this offense could be, it's going to go crazy, okay? Because Oscar Delp broke like every freaking tight end record in the world. Dom Lovett went for well over 1,000 yards. Colby Young was a beast. Dylan Bell was a beast. Listen, all jokes aside, I really think Oscar Delp is going to have a really big season. I do think he does have a good connection with Carson. And then I think the real connection, Dom has that connection. And then I don't – what is the actual –
I think we lost Dan. It is a picture-perfect way to freeze him. He looked like he was about to spit out either a really good question or a really hot take. Sucks to. There he is. There he is. There he is. Dan, you with us?
Listen, I told my son to stay off of Xbox, and clearly he just got on because my internet went to poop in a blink of an eye. All I was trying to say is, how tall is Colby Young? Is he 6'4"?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a while since we had a big guy on the outside that's extremely athletic and go get a ball with a massive catch radius. Listen, George Pickens had a big catch radius. I get that, but I think Georgia's offense has everything they need to be extremely successful. I think Dom Lovett is going to be extremely explosive. I think he's going to put up really good numbers. The question keeps coming up: can Georgia get a 1,000-yard receiver? I don't know if we're ever going to really throw it enough, but I think it's possible. But there is also a scenario where we have two people go for 1,000 yards. And, whoa, talk about people's heads would explode if that happens. But we have a quarterback that can really spread the ball around. And I think that would probably be the one reason that we don't get to 1,000 yards is because he's very judicious with the ball and he gives it to everybody. But I really think if they choose to put the ball in the air a lot, they're going to have a lot of success.
Absolutely. I want to see them break the 1,000-yard threshold because I can only imagine what that would look like for the receiver recruiting. Not that it's been lacking because it really hasn't, but maybe if you bust down that door of the 1,000-yard threshold, maybe you start making your way into serious conversations with a dude like Jeremiah Smith down the road. Those prodigies at the receiver position that now is supposed to, be a year one contributor over there at the Ohio State. I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there.
Dude, I'm telling you, Jeremiah Smith is something special.
I can't wait to watch him play.
I have seen some takes in my time that I kind of laugh at. But the fact that there are people who say this kid is going to factor in the receiver of the year conversation and potentially in the Heisman Trophy conversation as a freshman should be laughable. That should be laughable that a wide receiver as a freshman could potentially do either of those things. I don't believe for 1 second either is laughable.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting to see what he looks like because I think we've all seen the buzz about him. He was somebody that almost every college coach in the offensive coach in the country was trying to get coming out of it was IMG if I remember correctly, right? Or no, is that wrong? I forget where he played high school ball at. I know it was not here in Georgia. I do know that for sure. Dan, we did it last week. We're gonna do it again this week. I'm gonna go first this time because I got a video real quick, and then I'm gonna hand it over to you. I got a play of the week this week, and
all right.
I was down at Putnam versus Morgan County. Pretty good game. Morgan County ran away with it kind of towards the end, established themselves after just a feisty Putnam performance in the first half. They made it close, made it a dogfight, and then Morgan County came out with a new, focus and laid it on them in the second half. But hey, shout out to Ty Tillery, UGA baseball commit. He plays cornerback over there at Morgan County. Dan, I think I sent you this clip.
You
he
did?
took a bubble screen, picked it off, and took it to the house. Now I'm going to play it for our folks over here on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, hop on over there. Or if you're on Twitter, Twitter's, I think, giving us most of our audience right now. You can watch this on my timeline. He's going to be at the top of the screen here in a moment. I think that might be him right there. That was maybe by far the biggest example to me of why you always record these games. I mean, just absolutely jumped the screen here. I don't know how he ended up staying up here and ended up taking it to the house. That's a dude right there. So shout out to Ty Tillery. Heck of a game over there for Morgan County. He's my, I guess what you can say will be my dude of the week. Dan, who is your dude of the week this week?
Well, it's always going to come from Mill Creek because that's just what I do. But I will give a little bit of credit to the other team. Norcross had a kid, their quarterback, Dylan Muhammad, didn't necessarily have the best day in the air, but he had an amazing day on the ground. Very tough to tackle, very quick, very elusive. Played very good for Norcross. But my guys offensively it's going to be hard to identify just one person. So let me just say this. All offensive line, you had Murphy is our left tackle. Hillman is our guard. Cooper Harris was our center. Oh my gosh, I'm a blank on the other guard. I don't mean to do that. Anyway, I just completely blanked. I know that offensive line did an amazing job, and I apologize. I cannot believe I just blanked on our offensive line. But the offensive line did an amazing job. Our quarterback is Shane Throgmartin. He was not touched the entire day. He was able to stand in the pocket, deliver the football with confidence. He did a great job. We have a wide receiver, Trey Walker, very fast on the outside. Had a big play to him late in the game that was very important. We had a touchdown to Devin Hamilton. The offense looked really, really good. But again, Daniel Smith stood out on the offense. They gave it to him over and over again. He is the bell cow. And then on defense, Luke Metz, and I didn't mention him in the first game because it would be too easy just to say Luke Metz every single game. But Luke Metz played an incredible defensive game, flying around the football. He makes an impact, whether he's making the tackle or not. They run away from him more times than not. He's in coverage. He's rushing the passer. He's making tackles. He's chasing people down. And then even on the offensive side, he scores a touchdown in the tight end position. And that clip was up on, I want to say Rusty Mansell put it up. The touchdown, Shane Throgmartin to Luke Metz. He absolutely got knocked as soon as he touched the ball, but it didn't faze him at all. He just pops up for the touchdown. Again, Norcross, a really good team, really well coached, and Mill Creek went into their house and did a great job at home against Archer. It's our first home game of the year, 7:30 on Friday. If you have a chance to make it out, it's good football. I'm telling you, it's the highest classification in the state of Georgia. It's a very talented team, very well coached. I don't know exactly how the season is going to play out. It's hard to say with high school kids, but the first two real games, I've been really impressed. And the kids have executed extremely well. And I know that all offseason, our Coach Lovelady, made a mention that when you have your quarterback back, which is Throgmartin, it's, you're more comfortable. And he's done a great job of just doing what needs to be done. Not one of those guys that has to put up massive stats, just does what needs to be done. And I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Absolutely. Guys, we will bring this back next week. We will also have a Georgia football game to talk about. I'll be at Westlake, Gainesville this week. Really excited to see that one. Going to be what I expect to be a really good game. I'm sure we'll have maybe a few dudes over there from that game. Dan, man, I'm excited. I just blanked right there for a second. I'm excited. We have Georgia football back. We have college football back. The slate this weekend alone, I won't say elite because I'm going to save Elite for October 12th in that slate. But pretty good week 1 slate over here this weekend. Guys, that's hold the horses. Damn, we didn't do it. And I forgot.
I know. I was waiting for it.
Georgia, Clemson, prediction time. What do you say, my friend?
31-10.
I assume Georgia.
Hell yeah.
All right.
I don't think I've ever picked Georgia to lose on the show.
We did get close. At least I got close. I think it was last year versus Bama. I was in the air before that game. Dan, let's put some stakes to it.
All right.
We'll put some stakes to this. Whoever gets, I guess we'll say the closest in terms of whoever wins each week in terms of closest predictions, closest score lines, the winner will receive a bottle of Hunker Down Bourbon. Just released over there. You can check it out. Go support the Class City Collective and support your Georgia Bulldogs. So if Dan gets the most scores right this season, I will gift him that, and he can put that in the background for all I care of his show, of the studio over there. Dan, I'm going to go with I'm going to go 42-20.
Ooh,
little high scoring, just a tad bit. 20, I think, will be a solid output for Clemson against a Georgia defense that's supposed to be really good. But I got Georgia hitting over 40 this game. I'd love to see if Georgia could go 40 each and every game. Now, may not be doable considering who they play week to week, but I think they're going to get close. So I'm going to go 42-20. Georgia wins by 22. Both of us have them covering the spread this week. But with that being said, let's go ahead and flash the rolling ticker of words. I don't know what this. I guess it is a ticker. To be sure, follow Dan Kiley at Dan Kiley3 on Twitter. Follow me at Harrison Reno. Guys, that's going to wrap up episode 123 of the Top podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe. Rate us 5 stars, if you will, please, over there on whatever podcast platform you're listening us to. We will see you next week with another game edition of the Top podcast. That's Dan Kiley. I'm Harrison Reno. I even got the point right this week, first try. Guys, we are locked in over here on the Top podcast.
Go Dogs!